Hello, welcome to another motorcycling video. This one is a little dark as it was shot at about 6:30 in the morning and the sun was just rising. Today I'm going to talk about motorcycle safety, something I have covered in a few other videos, but this one is going to focus on the safety of the pillion or passenger. I'm not a motorcycle safety instructor, but I think the things I'm going to suggest are common sense. If you wish to comment, please do so. The only thing I ask is that your comments be based on the content. If I made a factual error, I am happy to be corrected. I'm prompted to make this video because over the recent weekend I had my daughter and granddaughter come visit. They both expressed a desire to take a ride on the Spyder. Not one to miss the opportunity to ride the Spyder, I agreed and took them both, separately of course. My granddaughter is 13 and has never been on a motorcycle of any sort, but was keen, so off we went. When you get in your car, you know, probably without thinking about it, that you are responsible for the passengers. They depend on you to get them safely where they want to go and home again. That is the case whether you're going to work, to the shops, or on a family outing. You probably don't have it at the forefront of your brain, but you know there are airbags, seat belts, and crumple zones to protect the occupants of the car. If your car is a fairly new one, you also have a suite of driver assistance warnings to tell you about speed signs when you're departing from your lane, if there is something behind you when you are reversing, and so on. All in all, you're in a pretty safe environment, but you and the passengers are only as safe as the person driving the car. In this case, that is you. When you get on a motorcycle, there are none of those things. There are no airbags. There are no crumple zones. There is no driver assistance, although a bike might have traction control and ABS. All that you have for protection in the case of an accident is whatever protective gear you put on. Helmets are compulsory in Australia. The other items are optional, but if you decide not to wear gloves, jacket, proper pants, or Kevlar jeans and a proper jacket, leather or other approved material, you are doing so at your own risk and against all accepted advice from people in the motorcycling world as well as the road safety world. Now you have decided to take someone else on the back of your motorcycle. There are some restrictions depending on the type of license you have. Don't be tempted to ignore them. They are there for your protection, as well as the safety of the person who might be on the back. You cannot be as relaxed as the car driver with all the safety things I mentioned earlier. Without doubt, you are responsible for the safety of the pillion. Potentially, you have their life in your hands. In those circumstances, safety starts before the passenger gets on the bike. That brings me back to my granddaughter. She had never been on a bike, so I had to tell her that she needed a full suite of gear. Fortunately, my wife has a set of leathers, a helmet, and gloves, so she was pretty well set up, but she only had joggers. I provided her with a pair of work boots that lace up tightly, came up over the ankle, and had a steel cap and toe box so her feet were well protected. Open-toed shoes, sandals, snappy-looking heels, joggers, even business shoes are no good. If you can't provide safety gear, then get a cab or an Uber and save the ride for another day when you have all the gear. Make no mistake, if your pillion is not properly dressed and there is an accident, you will carry the guilt of any injuries for a long time afterwards. Imagine if there was an accident that resulted in a fatality, but you survived because you were wearing protective equipment. Once your pillion is properly dressed, then they require some instruction about what to do on the bike. I'll come back to what I told my granddaughter about the Spyder. For the moment, let's think about how a two-wheel motorcycle behaves. When I rode them, and I still have one as well as the Spyder, I found they behave differently two-up than they did when I was riding solo. When a passenger, the bike felt more planted on the road. That is natural. You now have another 60 kilos or more on the bike and over the back wheel. Maneuvering the bike isn't as easy as it was because there is now that additional weight to contend with, and stopping requires more time and effort because of the extra weight. As the rider, you know these things and factor them into your ride. The pillion might not even be aware of those features. When you take a corner or around a curve or bend, you know the bike is going to lean. That's just how it works, and you are used to it because you ride all the time. Your passenger may have noticed the M when you have ridden off after a visit. That doesn't mean they've experienced them and know how to react. Before they get on the bike, especially if it is the first time, you ought to explain the leaning thing and tell them what to do. They just need to sit still and let the bike, and you handle the curve or bend or corner. They don't need to lean more or lean the other way to counteract. In fact, that could be dangerous. A tourer or a cruiser generally has a longer wheelbase and a more comfortable seating position for the passenger. On a sports bike, the passenger is up high behind the rider, but in a crouched position, on a pad that doesn't look very comfortable. The angle between the thighs, knees, lower leg, and feet seems very cramped, and to me it looks like the pillion could get cramped very quickly. As the rider, you need to be aware of this and perhaps tell the pillion they can stretch their legs if you're at a traffic lights, but to get them back on the pegs once you start to move. You will want to, or at least you ought to warn your passenger to get comfortable, and as best as possible sit still, because even slight shifts in their weight can unsettle a bike, and at 100 kilometers per hour that could have disastrous results. You might need to explain what happens when you brake, that is, the weight is transferred forward, and the front forks will dip with two on the pillion might be thrown slightly forward and bump into your back. There might even be a clash of helmets, hopefully a gentle one. The more informed your pillion is, the better prepared they are for the ride and what happens on the road. Now you've given your pillion all this information and told them to hold onto the grab handles or to you, and you're ready to go. Resist the temptation to rip the throttle open and crank it up to 100 straight away. Give the pillion a few Ks to get used to the ride and process in real-world driving all that stuff you told them in the garage. Also, if you're riding on a multi-lane road, resist the temptation to flit in and out of the lanes. Lane splitting is now a bit more complicated because you're carrying extra weight, and in any case it is illegal. Even lane filtering with the traffic traveling at less than 30 Ks per hour is tricky because the bike is more unstable at low speed, and now you have extra weight to contend with while attempting to lane filter and get to the head of the line of traffic for a quick getaway when the light goes green. Even if your pillion is irregular, it doesn't hurt to remind them of these things. Now as to what I told my granddaughter, who was 13 and never been on a bike before.
I told her that when we turned right she might feel as if she was being pushed back on the seat and to the left. There is a lot of bodywork in the seat and the surrounding panels to support the passenger in armchair comfort. Nevertheless, I told it might help to lean slightly forward and to the right as if leaning into the turn. The same applies on a left turn. I would be leaning left and slightly over the left handlebar. After the ride she agreed she did feel like that and did need to make the moves I had suggested. She soon got used to it. I have never been on the back, but I had a feeling there might be a bit of a fishtail feeling coming from the back wheel. I assured her it was normal and that the bike was stable, so she didn't need to worry or do anything. As it turned out, that was not the case, but she did feel a bit of wind in the face even with the screen in the highest position. She wanted the helmet visor open to get that feeling. That's part of why we ride. All in all, it was an enjoyable experience for her, and she said she would like to do it again. I think being informed about how the bike behaves and what she should do made the experience better. As the rider or driver, all the things that I have spoken about before, like paying attention to the road, obeying all road rules and laws, taking note of all speed signs and direction signs, as well as not riding while impaired by any substance, apply. If your pillion is in an impaired state through alcohol or drugs, don't take them. Their behavior could be unpredictable and have catastrophic results for both of you. Those are my thoughts on pillion safety. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your ride. Perhaps we'll see each other on the road somewhere.